What's going on, everybody? It's Professor Zeus, and I'm back with another video. If this is your first time at the channel, just know I greatly appreciate you for stopping by. Go ahead and hit subscribe. We're on our way to 2,000 subscribers. We are taking it the humble route. Guys, before I get into today's video, I want to say my sincere apologies for taking such a long hiatus. I recently just came back from Tampa, Florida, where I, spent time with my wife, my son, and we had a great time. But what happened was I came back and I felt ill. Like I had I don't even know what type of illness that was. It was like a canker sore or whatever. So essentially I couldn't breathe. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink. Everything. I was in pain, essentially. So I'm just now, getting off that. And then I also spend time for my best friend. He's getting married at the end of this month. So there's a bachelor party weekend that I attended. So again, I just want to say my sincere apologies for not getting you guys the news. There's been so many different things that's been happening that I wanted to, talk to you guys about, but, I'm happy that I'm here. I'm going to start pushing out more content. I'm sorry, but, the topic of today's video is, Israel has just bombed Iran, right? And, these have sparked a lot of complications across the world because this kind of affects everybody. And I wanted to really just go into it. Just kind of like a brief history of the conflict, where the United States stands in this and how this could, essentially affect US citizens. So this is a rapidly evolving situation. It just happened last night and there's a lot of global implications. So I'm going to try to break this down to the best of my ability. So last night, Israel launched a series of unprecedented airstrikes targeting a lot of Iran's nuclear facilities. And these also included military bases, a lot of key personnel, including a lot of Iran's senior nuclear scientists and high-ranking military officials like Hussein Salami. He's head of Iran's Revolutionary Guard. And a lot of reports are indicating that, Israel essentially struck these sites because, they have a lot of uranium enrichment facilities and they're just trying to essentially disrupt Iran's nuclear program. And they're doing this because Israel is claiming that this is a step towards nuclear development on Iran's part. And Israel doesn't want Iran to have nuclear weapons. But Iran is insisting that its program is for civilian energy purposes only. And, a lot of these attacks are far larger than previous issues because they're escalating a lot of fears for a more broader conflict, right? So Iran has already retaliated. They've already, launched about 100 drones towards Israel. And this is about a 7-hour flight in between for missiles and different things to launch. And, Israel has the Iron Dome. So it's possible that a lot of these things were intercepted. And, a lot of the Iranian leaders, like the supreme leader, Ayatollah, he's vowed a harsh and decisive response, raising a lot of concerns about a potential all-out war. And, a lot of people on social media are just really, really skeptical about this whole situation, right? And because, the complications they're huge, right? If Iran retaliates, it could overwhelm Israel's air defenses. And the conflict risks drawing in regional players like Hezbollah and the Houthis. And we've already heard earlier this year about this, the types of issues that they've had, specifically the Houthis, right? Remember Signalgate with Secretary Pete Hegseth of the Trump administration. So the Houthis could potentially, disrupt critical oil routes like the Strait of Hormuz. And this could essentially destabilize the whole Middle East. And, this conflict has real, I'd say deep roots, stemming from ideological, religious, and geopolitical tensions, right? Since the Islamic Revolution in 1979, Iran's government has opposed Israel's existence, supporting groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, which Israel considers terrorist groups. And, senators like Rand Paul has also said that, Hamas was actually funded and created by Israel, right? And then we have the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, which was meant to curb Iran's nuclear program, was kind of like a flashpoint because the U.S.'s withdrawal from the deal in 2018 under President Trump, followed by a lot of renewed sanctions, essentially hardened Iran's stance and accelerated its uranium enrichment. So a lot of the recent talks have essentially fell to the wayside, and Iran has essentially I guess breached non-proliferation obligations for different agencies, which essentially set the stage for Israel saying that, okay, we can bomb them, right? And how the U.S. fits in all this, right? The U.S. position is extremely delicate because during the Biden administration, it was stated that it has not, or we were not involved in Israel strikes, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio calling it unilateral action. But the issue is the U.S. has long provided Israel with intelligence, military aid, and satellite support, which raises questions, right, about indirect involvement, right? And President Trump, in his recent statements, has urged Iran to negotiate a nuclear deal, warning of an even more brutal attack if talks fail, right? President Trump, he went on Truth Social and was saying, like, he's willing to kind of make a deal with Iran, but now Israel went behind, I guess, our back and went ahead and just bombed Iran while President Trump was actually trying to make a deal with Iran. So this is just really, really interesting from all fronts. And, despite all of this, right, the U.S. has kind of distanced itself militarily with no plans to deploy, bombers capable of, penetrating Iran's fortified nuclear sites. And at the same time, the U.S. has taken precautionary measures because it evacuated a lot of the non-essential personnel from Iraq and restricting diplomats' movement in Israel because it was, we felt like something was going on, right? And it's just so crazy because now Tehran in Iran has accused Washington of complicity, claiming the U.S. is Israel's primary backer. Now, the President Trump's current administration is balancing diplomacy and pressure because it's pushing for a deal to halt Iran's uranium enrichment, right? That's the thing that President Trump was saying on Truth Social. He wants to make a deal, but Israel went behind President Trump's back and just bombed him, right? And the financial aspect for U.S. citizens could really be significant because it could really affect the energy markets, right? The Middle East supplies about 30% of global oil, and any sort of escalation or turbulence can threaten the Strait of Hormuz, which 20% of the world's oil passes through there, which essentially means gas is going to be more expensive. Brent crude oil is already volatile, and a sustained conflict could push, a lot of these prices above $100 per barrel, which would increase gas prices at the pump to $4 to $5 or even higher. Right now, my local gas station, it's like $3.19 per gallon. Now, because of this, do I really want to see gas per gallon at $5? Do I want to see that? No, I don't want to see that. So we need to get it together, right? And this could also raise costs for transportation, heating, goods. And you guys know with all this tariffs and different things like that, everybody's already hanging on tight to their money. So this could essentially squeeze households' budgets even more. Inflation, already a concern, could worsen as supply chains face disruptions. We are already seeing supply chain disruptions again because of the tariffs. And I'm going to start making videos about the tariffs because there's been a lot of updates on that front too. Now, the U.S. stock market at the same time, specifically energy and defense sectors, could see a lot of volatility. with defense stocks potentially rising due to increased arms demand, and the SPY. The SPY was at, almost all-time highs yesterday at hitting 603, but it opened today at like 597, right? And that's a huge swing because the bombing happened last night. So a lot of, big money was dumping their SPY. So it really affected the markets, man. And the US government could also face pressure to increase military spending or aid to Israel, which would divert funds from domestic programs. I haven't even got to start talking to you guys about, President Trump's whole issue with the big, beautiful bill, his relationship with Elon Musk. A lot of things have been in the works since my hiatus from making videos with you guys, man. And if this issue now escalates, us as American taxpayers, we could bear the cost of heightened regional deployments or humanitarian aid for displaced populations. With global displacement, aka, refugees, people looking for shelter while their region is getting is war torn. It's already at 122 million according to the UN, but now it could increase more because of this issue. So, this Israel-Iran conflict, it's at a dangerous crossroads, right? Israel striking has escalated a decades-long feud, right? Risking a wider war with unpredictable consequences. And the U.S. now is caught between supporting its ally, being Israel, and avoiding a regional situation. And at the same time, American citizens, we're facing potential economic pain from rising energy costs and market instability, right? So this situation underscores the need for diplomatic solutions, but at the same time, with Iran vowing retaliation and Israel on high alert, the path to de-escalating this issue is very, very small, right? So I'm going to try to stay informed. You guys got to stay informed. This crisis will continue to shape global security and our wallets in the weeks ahead. So I just pray everybody stays safe. It's the weekend now, so everybody stay safe. Just try to be as positive as you can be. A lot of this stuff is out of our control, but let's try to keep let's be mentally steadfast, man. As always, if you made it this far, don't forget to like, share, and comment. What do you guys think about this conflict, man? And never ever forget, it's you and I verse. Information, application, execution. Until next time.